So we are joined here today with Dave Lee from Dave Lee on Investing. If you're watching my channel, you surely know who he is, but he's a very sharp guy, and he's got all kinds of investment advice. Not investment advice, do your own research, of course. Dave Lee, thank you for coming on.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, nice to be on your channel. Yeah, I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's great that we can finally connect. So we just had the earnings call very recently. What were the big strengths and weaknesses that you saw in the report?
Yeah, I mean it was a challenging earnings call because of a few reasons. One is you have Tesla's margins going down because they're reducing their prices, and there isn't any magic kind of solution where they've got all these extra, credits or things coming. I mean, they have, improving margins on their factories. They've got probably some IRA battery production credits and stuff, but it's not enough to offset the price cuts. And so the big challenge was the day prior to earnings, they had a massive price cut in the U.S., right? 3,000 for the Model Y, and that really hurts margins a lot. And so, yeah, it's understandable. Investors can be spooked out about things, and the whole question is, how does Tesla going forward recover those margins? And with Elon and Tesla management, they're like, oh, FSD will, we'll make a ton off of FSD. But the problem is most institutional investors don't believe FSD is coming anytime soon in terms of like the Robo Taxi model. So they're left in this kind of, limbo state where um, it's going to be a challenging next few quarters with margins compressing. And so, yeah, it's a difficult time, I think. Overall, though, I take a step back and I'm like, you know, the auto market is cyclical. And I personally think a lot of it is due to a crashing luxury market. I know I have a friend who sold like a kind of a supercar a few weeks ago, and he had to take a big cut in price. And I know, like for example, I'm a RV hobbyist, and all of the COVID RV kind of price gains are starting to like, deflate as well. Apple supposedly their MacBook or Mac sales have gone down up to 40% in Q1. Um, it's the biggest drop in like over a decade, and so there are a lot of things where I think with kind of a pending possible recession, the first items that are hit are maybe kind of these higher priced luxury items. And I think Tesla is their order flow has been hit some, and they've had to adjust. But I don't know. I think it's unclear. It's day to day. Who knows? Tesla might increase their price if they get a ton of orders the next week or two. Um, and another thing I was thinking actually this morning was Tesla's price. They kept it pretty high up until the end of last year. So it was like 65,000 for a Model Y. And they did so because they had this inflation strategy where they wanted to basically reduce or eliminate their wait list. And by doing that, they could just charge whatever price the market is wanting to pay. And that's a inflation kind of strategy where what if there was crazy 20% inflation continually, and Tesla had all these orders that they had to fulfill that were like ten or $20,000 cheaper, let's say. And so in order to avoid that situation, you kind of Tesla purposely raised their prices a bit too high to reduce the backlog. But one effect that no one's talking about that I've heard about is if you price the car a little bit too high, then what happens is if it's $65,000, the people who are shopping for a $45,000 or $50,000 car, they're not even going to think about a Tesla. And if they don't think about a Tesla, there needs to be like an incubation time before you actually order it. Like there's a interest in shopping time, and then there's an order time. And so by pricing it so high, they kind of maybe got rid of that incubation time and shopping time for people shopping for something 50,000 and under. And so when Tesla started to lower the price, maybe there just needs to be more time for people to start to get interested and start their process of researching and shopping and then ordering. So I don't know. I think overall, I'm not overly concerned. My focus is mostly like longer term. I know there's going to be lots of ups and downs in the short term, And that's life. There's lots of unexpected things. Like, who would have thought Tesla had to drop prices this much to keep their order flow going? But that's how it goes. Sometimes things don't work out. But I kind of take a step back and I look at the product, right? I look at the Model Y in my garage, and I'm like, man, that car is such a good car. It's like Tesla, if they've done anything right, it's making the product just an amazing product. And I think ultimately that's going to be the thing that pulls Tesla through. And the other thing is, like, you can't bet against Elon Musk. If you look at Starship, like, that's an amazing feat that they got it up and going. And sure, FSD might be late, but I think it's going to get done, and it's going to surprise people. And I think it's the same thing with Starship. Like Starship, I don't know, were you able to watch the launch?
I was.
So it's funny how the media, a lot of, or not everyone, but some of the media is like, oh my gosh, Elon Musk blew up Starship right after launch, and it's a failure, all this stuff. And it's the exact opposite in reality, right? SpaceX employees, they were ecstatic because this is like, oh my gosh, the culmination of many years of building this thing and then testing and actually getting it to fly. Like, that was the accomplishment. And so people were just like ecstatic, and I'm like, this is a huge accomplishment. But then you look at the same thing from another angle and you're like, oh my gosh, it blew up. Elon blew up another thing again, right?
And I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that online.
And I think what it is it's such a short-term attention culture we live in, where one headline, one tweet after another, people don't want to look into things with long attention spans, right? And if you look into it more than just a 30-second or 1 minute, thing, you'll see that, yeah, SpaceX's goal was just to get it to lift off, to get the data, and it was a massive success because a lot of people, most of SpaceX probably didn't expect it to actually be in the air for that long. And so that's the long attention view, where you're like, oh my gosh, huge success. The short attention view is like failure. And same thing with FSD. If you don't look into it deep enough, I think you look at it as, oh, Elon continually delays, failure, failure, failure. But there's a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, this is an extremely hard problem. It's the cutting edge of vision AI, and Tesla's making huge accomplishments in that area. And yeah, I think they have all the pieces in place. So overall, yeah, I'm fine. Have a decent attitude, and I think Tesla ultimately will be fine. A little bit of short-term pain, but that's how it goes.
So price cuts are obviously going to spur demand. How worried are you about margins over, let's say, the 3 to 6 month term?
Yeah, I think next quarter could be pretty ugly with margins, just because you had gross margins at about 19%, operating margins I think 11.4 or so, but that was before the $3,000 price cuts. And the problem with the price cut, and this is pretty early on in the quarter, it's still the beginning, the first month of the quarter, is with these price cuts, if you have a higher priced, if you ordered the car, let's say $4,000 or $5,000 higher, you're not going to take delivery on the car. You're gonna get the lower price, So everyone's gonna get the lower price. So it just basically shrinks everything down to that price. If you raise the price, it's kind of you don't get the full raised price, but you get a spectrum of people who have the older price and the new price. But lowering the price like this, you just get all of the low price. So this is a big hit to average sales price per car, and they don't have enough levers to lower their price that fast. Like Tesla is incrementally lowering their price, by efficiencies and manufacturing and all this stuff, but they don't have a magic switch where they can save like $5,000 in costs right off the bat. And the other thing is, this is with the $7,500 tax credit, right? Meaning this was like from $65,000 without the tax credit to basically
50.
50 minus the tax credit. So it's like 42.5 or something, right? So they say 43,000. So that's like a $22,000 drop in terms of the customer side. So it's a huge drop. It better stir demand, I mean, that was the challenging part. It's like people thought before the last price cut, it was stirring enough demand, or at least order rate. And that's another thing is I'm starting to distinguish between what Tesla calls demand and what other people call demand. I think most people think of demand as orders, like this, the people buying the car. Tesla looks at demand more, and Elon looks at demand more as people who aspire, who would like a Tesla, who like the brand, who would want it if they could afford it, that type of thing. And so Tesla thinks there's no demand problem because people love the brand, they would aspire to buy one. But in terms of order rate, like how fast the orders are coming in, sometimes that can be an issue because it has to match production somewhat. If orders are coming in below production rate, then you've got a glut of cars, and Tesla just can't have that. So if there's order rate is below production rate, they need to lower the price, and that's kind of their strategy. I kind of wish they would explore things like a referral program or something. I know a ton of people are talking about advertising, but to me, it's like I don't think you tell management what to do with certain issues like advertising or not. I think it's up to them. But in terms of like giving suggestions, like having a new referral program where let's say if you give people a test drive and they order a Tesla and take the delivery on a Tesla, you get $500. And there's a limit of 5 people that you could do, let's say in 1 year. That way, like certain influencers can't game the system. I think that would be pretty cool. People would maybe give more test rides, and $500 is almost like nothing in the bigger picture. And I think it gives some kind of way to spread the word. But I think, yeah, there are definitely different ways I think Tesla can approach the order rate issue. Yeah.
So talking about margin, let's talk about MegaPack. There's some opportunities there. What do you see going on with MegaPack? What are you thinking of it so far? What are you thinking of it in the next 1 year as it ramps in Lathrop and 2 years as it ramps in Shanghai?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually pleasantly surprised that we have a decent MegaPack ramping going on. I think it's almost 100% year-over-year growth right now of energy storage generation. So, and the margins are still kind of low teens. I think it's about 11% or so. So it's not great margins yet. Tesla is saying they're aiming for mid-20s, right? The kind of, you have to assume it's like 25%. That's their goal for margins with Tesla Energy. So, I mean, it's going to take time over time as they scale to get better operating leverage. They could, for example, things cost cheaper to make. They can deploy things faster at scale. So, yeah, I think their goal is trying to reach above 20%, closer to 25% by the end of the year. I think it's gonna be hard because 11%, 25 is hard. Maybe next year sometime, who knows? But yeah, I think it's a good business. It's growing. It's a growing business, and if they can do another 100% year over year, and if they could do like above 20% gross margins, like that's cool. And the other thing is, it's kind of a great business because the core operating expenses of Tesla, they're not. They're kind of flat in a sense because these are operating expenses across the company for engineers and sales and other stuff. So whatever Tesla does to scale Tesla Energy, it seems like they're putting those costs into cost of goods. So whatever, let's say, gross margins left over, let's say it's 20% or something. I don't think there's necessarily much operating expenses for that because that's already in kind of their core operating expenses. So the 20% gross margin could just flow right through into operating margins, and profit. So that's actually a great business. If you did 20% off of 100% year-over-year growth, yeah, good stuff. I do think though over time the vehicle market is going to be more lucrative, will be more lucrative. I think the autonomous driving market, transportation, I think is larger for the time being. I think there could be a time, in the 2030s or so where Tesla Energy might have its kind of moment where it eclipses transport, but we'll see. Yeah, definitely a good thing. And yeah, I think Tesla is setting up. I always look I try to look also long term, where 10 to 15 years from now, if Tesla continues to do what they're doing, especially with Tesla Energy, they could really have some standout breakthrough products, especially if they keep on doing research and development in really aggressive ways. So yeah, it's a big field. It's a huge field. Energy is huge. Energy is bigger than transport ultimately. One of the biggest industries in the world by far.
Sure. So, what is exciting you about Tesla beyond this year, beyond next year? We're talking 3, 5, 10 years. You mentioned autonomy maybe in the 30s, getting huge, maybe energy in the 30s. What are you thinking is going to be the most exciting?
Yeah, I mean, number one is the timeline for Robo Taxi, because that has the biggest potential to change the narrative and to change the game. Because if you could actually do Robo Taxi, have people in their car, if I could drive my car without even like being awake in my car, that type of game changer will drive crazy orders, right, to Tesla, and will um, increase margins like no other. So that is going to be the biggest catalyst of maybe the decade, right, for Tesla, is when they can actually roll out robotaxi. So to me, that's the most interesting. It's also the most challenging in some ways because it's a challenging problem, and there's all these edge cases. And while the car drives great in most situations, there are times where you're like, it's like it's not ready for prime time for at least someone to sleep in the car, for example. So that's number one. I think number two, longer term, 5-year timeline is Optimus. That's interesting because with full self driving, you kind of have to. It's an either all thing where it either controls a car or you control the car, meaning you're responsible or FSD is responsible. The problem with FSD being responsible is one mistake can kill your life, right? A split-second mistake. And that's the reason why it's so hard for Tesla. But with Optimus, you can make mistakes and it's not life-threatening. So you could roll out a robot. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it does things super useful. And so that's interesting. It's kind of like ChatGPT. If ChatGPT had to be 100% perfect, then they wouldn't roll it out ever, probably. I mean,
Ever.
not say ever, but it would be like years and years and years before they could even, try it out. But that's the reason why ChatGPT was so viral, and is it didn't have to be perfect. It could just highlight and showcase what it could do useful. And in a similar way, the humanoid robot could do something similar. If it could just showcase its usefulness, the mistakes are forgivable, just like a ChatGPT mistake, because you kind of accept that. It's not life-threatening. And so, yeah, I think we could see some amazing things with humanoid robot, especially when you combine kind of what they call these vision foundation models, where in AI you're getting the whole physical world and deciphering it, and you're getting to this place where AI is basically able to distinguish every single item, how fast it's going at what depth and velocity. So it's this whole 3D environment they're reconstructing with just through images or through video. And when you combine that together with these language foundational models where you're able to reason and communicate and come up with anything intellectual, and you combine these two models together in a humanoid format, then you've got some really, really amazing potential applications. So this is going to be, I think, one of the biggest game changers. Like AI in general is the biggest game changer this decade, but I think when you combine it in a physical form and you extend its applications beyond the computer screen and the phone, whatever, then you've got a whole new world. So yeah, Tesla seems to be in decent, good position for that. So those are probably the two most exciting things, I think, longer term. The next gen platform, is exciting with the cheaper car. I can't wait to get a Cybertruck, a Tesla van. Yeah, definitely lots of things going on.
And the thing with a lot of the AI, it's not perfect, and some of the charm is that it isn't. A lot of the fun you see with ChatGPT and a lot of the AI image generators is the errors, because you can often see how they got there and scratch your head and go, boy, that's. I mean, you're on the right path, but you're going the complete wrong direction.
Yeah.
I think the bot has the potential to have an outrageous margin, like beyond Apple margins.
Sure.
And because it's the software is the expense. Once you've got that, the hardware, it's cheaper than a car and it's worth more than a car. is my impression at least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's because the hardware itself is nominal, maybe 10 or 15,000. There's nothing totally special about it. It's like you've got, the FSD hardware, which they're getting in bulk anyways, and then you got the actuators and the rest of the robot. So you're not talking, it's not a overly expensive, hardware outfit there. But yeah, it's the software, and you could do more as a software as a service, right? A subscription model, monthly, yearly, etc. So yeah, the margins are going to be insane with that.
And I'm excited about that. In the past, what companies have excited you the way Tesla excites you? I mean, it's not fair. Obviously,
Yeah.
Tesla's quite unique, but what companies have stirred your cocoa in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of like a big tech enthusiast for a long time, so I've kind of followed the whole evolution of, the internet back in the late 90s and these devices, and so I was really into like the first Palm Pilots and the first, smartphones and the whole internet, even starting with Yahoo and Google, and then moving on to all these other things. To me, Apple was probably the the most exciting company pre-Tesla for me because the iPhone was such a huge jump. It brought basically computing into the hands of people, and a real operating system and real apps and internet, and it just blew up the whole experience of what's possible. And so for me that was the most exciting because it was something also you could touch. So like I was in line for the first iPhone, and I got it, and I was like showing people like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? And a lot of people, they just couldn't understand it, but for me it was obviously the beginning of this next huge revolution in tech. And the cool thing is you could follow it, so you could see the iPhone, you could play with the apps, you could see every improvement with each update, and then the next year you got an app store, so then you got to see the new apps, but then you get to see the what's trending. Like the early days of the app store were really cool because you could see the rankings, and then they would change all the time, and you see new apps. The first few years it was just a blast to see what was possible on your phone, and you had first seat. There weren't people ahead of you, meaning you got the phone when everyone else got the phone who wanted it, and you can get the apps when other people get the apps. There wasn't like this lag time, and so that was an amazing time. And we had my wife and I, we started a company was making apps, and so we had first seat in the developer community too, where we could see what was going on with all the changes in terms of the developer SDK, the functions that Apple would release or not release. And it was a blast because it was so fast too. Like for example, the first iPhones, they didn't have a video camera, right? And so people were like, what the heck? They're not releasing a video camera. And I remember, I think it was the second iPhone, they still didn't have the video camera. So it was like, but they had this unpublic API that allowed you to take like basically as many like 30 screenshots in a second or whatever, and you could use that to stitch together and make video. If you were a smart developer, right, you could actually create an app that pulled those screenshots, made a video, and created a video app. And so that's what we actually did. We created a video app, and it was so exciting because it was like there was nothing out there, and we were like racing to get it out. And then we had all this drama with Apple because they had many apps they approved with that same non-public API that they even featured, but they wouldn't release anything video recording. And so I had these like really crazy like communications with Apple and and some of their head management, and it was just such an exciting time and everything was was changing so radically fast too. And after the first few years, then it just kind of slowed down where it became more of a normal thing. And now it's like it's so mature, the app stores and all this, the software, where it's a different beast. It's not it's not the same as it was back in the early days. So I think there are certain times where you get just this hyper fast change, and it's just super exciting, and so many things. The path of the future can change, can be altered depending on the decisions, right, that people make and the companies make. So that was really fun. I would never miss a single keynote or anything by Apple, during that whole time. It's just fascinating.
They were rock festivals. They were huge. It was definitely an exciting time. And the Palm Pilot, I'm sure you still remember the funky letters you had to type to make it to do your input. It was very painful. Well, Dave, I appreciate your time. This has been absolutely a treat, and I am so glad you could fit me in before we both head out of town to different places. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure to chat with you. I'm curious, if you don't mind, what was your impressions of earnings report, and what are you most excited about with Tesla going forward?
Sure. So for the earnings report, it came in at 85 cents as expected. Mm-hmm. So of course it's down 10%. Why wouldn't it be? That's just how it goes. We got to sell the news. I thought I heard a lot of people grumbling that they didn't like how the call was handled. I liked how it was handled. I thought we wanted promises. Right, but you criticize him for the promises too. So let's, which one do you want? And he doesn't have a crystal ball. That's something I would say. I was a loan officer back in the day. Mm-hmm. And people would say, I don't know if I should lock in. Are the rates going up or down? I don't have a crystal ball. You have to make that decision. But yeah, what's the 4680 ramp at? It's unknown and unknowable. We're doing our best. I know you want better guidance, but that's what we've got. So I was happy with it. I was happy with the call. The earnings report, of course, I'd have liked more, but I was happy with it. And what I'm most excited about is the Unboxed method. The Unboxed production coming out of Giga Mexico, Giga Nuevo Leon, in a year and a half, more like a year and a half, is going to be, I'm confident they can dial it in a reasonable time frame. And I think the ramp is going to start by looking pretty impressive until we realize what the real number is going to be. Just like how Shanghai looked impressive when it got to, a couple thousand, 4,000 or 5,000 a week. And now it's, they didn't update the nameplate capacity beyond 450,000 until they were running well north of 700. And now they're saying it's 750 plus. No, it's a million plus. And I think Mexico is going to be closer to 4 million when it's fully ramped. And it's a smaller battery, it's fewer atoms, it's going to be a lighter car, which means cheaper brakes, cheaper tires, cheaper wheels, and the cost spiral comes down. It's a virtuous cycle is what it is. And that's what I'm most excited about. And then I guess second would be MegaPack. And FSD and bot are just too far off for me to get excited right now, or I'll burn myself out.
Do you have a FSD right now on your vehicle?
I do not own a Tesla because I have 4 boys and we would only fit in a vehicle I cannot afford.
I hear you.
So I do not have FSD. I have experience with it. I have used it in other people's cars, and it is, depending on where you are, borderline magical. On normal roads, it's shockingly competent, but we've done some stress tests where we took it to places we knew it would struggle, and it tried to kill us. So it's got some room to grow. But as a driver assist feature, it is, if you think of it as a driver assist feature, the people I know personally who have it wouldn't go back. They would not go back. When my buddy upgraded to a new Model X, he was annoyed that he had to wait to get back into beta. So, but he got it pretty quick, a couple months. So yeah, I think it's a very exciting product, but it remains impossible until it isn't. And if Tesla is second or third to market, but still within 2 years, they win. Because it's going to take, if Waymo is perfect tomorrow, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to actually get it out into a fleet. And if they get it perfect with what they've got now, it's going to be hideous. They're going to have to design a whole new car to make it not look ridiculous. And a lot of buyers aren't going to buy something that looks like that. So that might just be an enterprise solution where Tesla's going for an all of the above solution. That's my thought.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. Have a safe trip. And
Yeah.
I hope to talk to you soon.
Same to you. All right. Take care.